Hey, what's going on, family? This is one of many videos that I'll be doing. My goal is that I'm going to do teaching videos, music advice, music industry advice, counseling, coaching, like the whole nine. And so I figured I'd start with a video that just talked about how I got started into music. If you have any questions, please drop them below, and I'm going to answer all the questions after the live stream. So thanks for hanging out with me for a second. I got a phone holder. If this thing falls, just bear with me for a second. And also, I'm a little congested too, so bear with me on that tip. But this is the first of a long series of vlogs that I'm going to have between here, Facebook, and also on YouTube under Aaron Hills Music and also the Fruition Community. So let's start from the very top. How did I get started and involved with music? So, excuse me, the congestion. First thing is, I didn't grow up as a child playing an instrument and displaying musical abilities at a young age. That just wasn't my past. You know, it's funny because a lot of the people that I'm with now or around, they were in band, you know, in the elementary and the middle school, you know, or they were playing an instrument. Some people like grew up in the church and was playing instruments there. But I did none of that. Excuse me, I didn't really get into music of any sort until I was about 14 years old. And yeah, thanks. What's up, Terry? So yeah, I didn't get started. Yeah, you definitely know this is true, because I was around you for my childhood and I wasn't doing not one thing with anything. I was doing karate and reading books, right? Reading a million books. So I didn't do anything in my childhood musically. I didn't get started until about the age of 14. At 14, what happened, and I would say between 13 and 14, I became infatuated with hip-hop. And I remember my very first experience was going to my father's house for the summer. And I used to listen to Wu-Tang and Raekwon. And I remember taking this Raekwon song. It was either Glaciers of Ice or Criminology. And I remember writing out the lyrics. And I never forget, I was on my father's front porch with my younger brothers. And while they went to play, I had this is telling how, you know, it wasn't that long ago, but I had a cassette player. And I was playing Glaciers of Ice over and over and over and over. That, and I think it was Criminology. And I was writing out the lyrics. And eventually, I was practicing the lyrics. So, I got the hang of that. And then I think I wrote my first rhyme after that. If I remember it, at some point, not in this stream because I'm not going to remember it, but at some point if I remember it, I might kick it for y'all. It's kind of funny, especially when I first started off, because the goal is that you don't know. It's just like anything. You don't really know what to do. So first thing you do is look at the examples that you have and try to emulate those. So yeah, it's I'm laughing because, yeah, I became a conscious rapper later, but it wasn't really that at first, because I just thought that's how you rap. You had to include all these other things in there, whether you really live that life or not. But at any rate, though, the thing that I did learn was rhyme and rhythm. And then I met up with my homeboy, Terrence Clark. I hope he sees this stream, because then we could have some fun laughs as he chimes in. But I start with my homie Terrence Clark, and here's how it started. 8th grade graduation. Both of us were on punishment for something that we did. I remember what I did. I'll share that with y'all later. It actually wasn't anything I did bad. I just fell into an unfortunate situation with counterfeit money. It was kind of crazy. But long story short, we're on punishment until the end of the year. And we promised each other, man, when we get off punishment, because I heard that he rapped, when we get off punishment, man, after we graduate, because that was when our parents said you're officially done. At that point, man, we're gonna make a song, man. We're gonna do this thing. And that's what we did. I came over his house. He had a little boombox, and we used to rap into the boombox. Like, we were rapping to the speaker because we didn't have microphones or anything like that. And I actually, to this day, I actually don't even remember how that worked, because you can't really find a radio, like a boombox, that you can hit record and record into the same speaker that pumps out the music. I have no idea how we did that. He might be able to let me know and remind me, but that's where it started. Oh, we got a little bit of a glare. Sorry for the glare, you guys. Sorry for the glare. I think it's where I got my phone placed. So, at any rate, you can still hear me. When I get out of the sun, you'll be able to see me better. But it started there. We're rapping into the boombox. And my buddy Terrence, he was a really good rapper. I was just starting, but I was finding my way, and I started to really get good at it. And another buddy of mine, Will Randall, I hope he chimes in too. He jumped into the group. We all had the group together. It was a 3-man group. 2 of us were just MCs, and my buddy Terrence Clark, he was an MC as well as producer. So it was really cool because every day after school, we would come home, and that's what we would do with our time. You know, it was extremely productive. It was extremely productive. And we stayed out of trouble, and we did some positive things with our life. You know, really, really cool. And his parents supported us, you know, because we stayed out of trouble. We were just doing something positive. We were really experimenting with music. And we had a lot of positive music, too. We weren't really a negative group. We were just finding our way. So long story short, that's going on. I'm 14. You know, I learned how to rap. And we get to the point where... All right, I think we're back. So we get to the point where we're releasing... we have our... our own EP, you know, and here's the funny part. So we were, you know, working with cassette tapes. And so here was our duplication process, you know, after we finished. First of all, let me go way back. This is going to be probably part 1 of like 5, because I'm going to take my time. There's a lot of fun and funny stories in this. So let me tell you about the recording process. So it was nothing like what I have access to today. And this was 96, well, I say 95, going into 96. It was absolutely nothing like how I have access to today. And what I mean by that is, we were in his back room in his basement with a keyboard on top of a washing machine, a cassette deck and a tuner, a sampler that we bought. That was like the most expensive thing we had, old Gemini sampler. That was for DJs. A little, I think it was 14 seconds. It was either 8 or 14 seconds. Now I can't. I mean, it's crazy that that's all the time that we had. Like now it's infinite. But we had an 8 or 14 second sampler. And for those of you who don't know what a sampler is, it's a device where you can play another recording and hit a record button, and it'll just record like 8 or 14 seconds. And then when you hit the button over and over again, it'll keep playing that back. Excuse me. So we had a sampler, we had a little cheap keyboard, little Yamaha keyboard, and a cheap tape deck, and maybe 1 mic. So the keyboard only had 5 tracks. So you could only make up to 5 instruments on one song. Now the funny thing about it was, and this holds true today, when you have a limitation like that, it makes you be more creative. So my buddy Terrence, like he was putting together tracks that, even with those 5 tracks, there was a lot of stuff going on. And then you added the sampler to it. Now the thing is, when we would record the song, because we're not talking about CDs and we're not talking about digital equipment and multi-track processors and all of that, is just the ability to record one thing at a time and take your time, and it's all nice and neat. We just had to record everything in one take, on a tape. And so the first thing was getting the beat and the sample to play at the same time, you know, because we didn't even have a 4-track, so we couldn't even overdub. Literally everything was in one take. So if you got all the way to the last 2 words and you messed up, we had to do the whole song over again. You know, the whole song, like everybody's part, right? And I think we only had 1 mic. So with that being said, the way that we would, the first thing is getting the beat to start. So he would hit play on the keyboard, and at the same time, if it was a sample that was supposed to play right at the top of the beat, we had to like take our time and touch the buttons at the same exact time. Now, that's really humanly impossible. So, you know, sometimes somebody would hesitate and then they would be off beat. You gotta start over. You just gotta keep starting until everybody hits it at the same time. Nowadays, all of that song, you don't have to do any of that. You know, that's why it's so funny looking back at it. But those were the times. So that's how you get the beat to play. And then if there was a sample playing throughout the song, like say there was a beat like, and say the sample was like, hey, 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 like you literally had to stand there and go the whole song on the sampler. The whole song, like that was the only way to do it. You had to play it through the whole song. Nowadays you just record it one time, copy and paste, and it just, you know, it's done. So it allowed us to be super creative. You know, we didn't have MIDI. MIDI is MIDI is a technology where you can take a cable and hook it up to different machines. And when you do something on one, it controls all the machines. We didn't even have that at that time. And I think his keyboard was MIDI capable. We just didn't have the cable. So we did everything manually. Then when it came to the vocals, like I said, if you had multiple people on the same song, we use the same mic. When your part is done, you have to switch and give it to the next person and hope they don't mess up. So needless to say, you know, this process and like all the musicians that come before us and artists, this process made us like really good, because you got to keep doing it until your perfection is there. So that's what recording was like. It was, all right, I think we're back. My connection keeps dropping, so it was really interesting and a lot of fun. So that was hip hop for me. By the time there's more details in that. Like, oh, I got to tell you this. Like, I can't leave this out. So we released, I think it was the group's first single or my first single? It'll come back to me which one it was. But the EP. We released the EP, and our story is that we went platinum in the first period of our homeroom class. Because what we did was, you know, the only way you could duplicate was to actually just make copies, you know, on different tapes. So I was like the duplicator. I had just a regular tape deck, and I just decided, you know, it was me that would spend the time sitting home recording the same music from one tape to another tape, and then handwriting the name of the EP on there, the title, and putting it in a nice case. So we would go to we were actually practicing business stuff like early on. So the tapes were like, I don't know, $2 or $2.50 or something like that. And what we would do is every time we sold a tape, you know, that tape went back. Just making a deposit at the bank, y'all. Living life. So, oh, you out of service. Okay. So not right now. All right. So the tape, you know, we're duplicating tapes, and the thing about it is we're selling for $2, and we would go down to, I think it was a CVS at that time, on Liberty Road. We lived in Woodmore, in Baltimore County, in Woodlawn, Woodmore. So we would go, we would go to CVS. What's up, everybody? Thanks for hanging out for a second. And please drop your questions, because I'm going to answer all the questions after the live stream is done. Drop any question you have. This is the very beginning of a long series of blogs answering questions, giving advice, inside tips, like just the whole nine, and documenting the whole journey. So, yeah, with that being said, right, now I'm going to go through an ATM line, but I'm going to hang with y'all. We're going to keep this thing moving. So with that said, we go to CVS and we buy tapes. And that's the investment back in the company. The investment back in the company is that every time we sell a tape, we go buy a tape, or we go buy a pack of tapes from CVS. And CVS was like maybe 10 minutes from where we live. So we were happy. We would come from school.
How are you today?
I'm fine. How you doing?
Good, thank you.
All right. We would come from school, and we would take our $2 donations. We would add them up. We'd go buy some more Maxell tapes, and we start the process all over again. The first time that we put our tapes on sale, in first period of our class, we had the best teacher ever. Shout out to Miss Coleman. I don't know where where Miss Coleman is. She was a great teacher. I'll tell y'all more about her later. But she supported her. Like, she literally let us do our music in class and sell the music and everything. And she kept it, you know, in order. But she really supported us. And so we say we went platinum first period of that class because of the fact that we sold out of all our tapes. But anyway, we're doing that and we're having fun. We even shot a music video, and it was really funny because we shot a video one time with one of the group members not being there, and I think it was around the time when Biggie Smalls might have passed or something like that, and it was weird because he wasn't there. And we were filming the video and he wasn't there, so it was like he was dead or something. Like, it was crazy. But on top of that, what was really funny about that moment is that because we're trying to be cool, we're trying to, you know, make it look like how it's supposed to look. So we went outside to my buddy's father's Volvo. And we did the and we can't drive, we're like 14. So we did the video, you know, in his Volvo and standing outside of it like, you know, like we had a nice car. Really, really, really funny. Really, really funny. So anyway, with that being said, we're doing our thing, and eventually it gets to the point where I start taking an interest in production. Shout out to Mr. Fernando Allen. If you guys know him, I'm gonna give him a shout out on the feed too after I finish. But the point is that he was my 9th grade music teacher, and at some point, I think it was in the 10th grade, I had enough credits in this class that I no longer needed this class. But I was still in it. I had enough credits. I wound up graduating in 11th grade. He let me come in this class every day and practice production. So that's how I really got my start. And with that being said, I started off, and at first, you know, the tracks were kind of rinky-dink. I was just getting my feet wet. But eventually, I got the hang of it. And I had already learned from my buddy Terrence, you know, how things go. So all I had to do was just take my time and practice and work on it. So here was my process. Really funny. Really cool, actually. I can't even say it's funny. It's just really cool. My process was digital cable had just come out, and my family was fortunate enough to have it in '96. And I bought a ASR 10, which is a groove machine, and I bought a 4-track tape machine. And I used to take a blank tape, and every morning I would plug up the 4-track to the television. And this is when they first came out with all the different channels that had different styles of music on each channel. And not like MTV or Jukebox, but like the channels where you can go to, and if all you want to hear is soundscapes the whole day or the whole time, you just go to the soundscape channel or the country channel or R&B, whatever. So every day I would take a tape, put it in my 4-track, connect it to the TV, and I would just hit record, and I would go to school. And when I would come home from school, I would have a whole tape filled with nothing but, say, classical music, or another day it'd be nothing but rock, another day it'd be nothing but country. And because I was sampling, we would sample from records, but I didn't have a record collection, so that's what I used as my record collection. And of course it was bigger than the record collection. The only thing was I was at the mercy of whatever I recorded. But that was actually good because it allowed me to just have random stuff to listen to and to be forced to make tracks from just random stuff. So that gave me a really good ear. So that started moving, and eventually it got to the point where I was doing, you know, good enough tracks to where the group could use the tracks. And that's how I got my start.
Did you need a balance?
No, thank you.
Okay, was there anything else I can help with today?
No, that's it, thank you.
Okay, I'll send up everything. I appreciate your business. You have a nice day.
You too, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm rhyming and I'm doing production, and things are going, you know, fairly well. I get to a point and I start getting accolades from producers even in like New York and some other places, and I was 17, and you know, it was something to really be proud of. Like, I really felt good about it. I was like, wow, I didn't know I had this in me. So at some point, and I was on it every day after school, that's all I did. At some point I said to myself, if I can do this well, and this is a moment of inspiration for anybody listening who falls into this category. I was like, if I could do this well without knowing anything about music from a perspective of music theory and ear training and how to play an instrument, what would happen if I learned that? I mean, because I was already good with just using my ear and chopping samples and making beats. Like, and I know that's subjective, but I mean, I got accolades from other people, and the group loved the track, so I was fairly decent. And so I was like, if I could do this well without knowing anything about music, what would happen if I took up theory, took up an instrument? I took up the piano because out of all instruments, that was the one that I was the most familiar with, because of the fact that, you know, in the studio, that was the one that I saw the most, and the one that I was able to touch the most was a keyboard. So I was like, well, you know, it'll be keyboard. And that started my journey as far as keyboard. The first thing I did was I taught myself how to read music. The funny thing is, I was living with my father, and he had a course for how to read me. This is just one funny thing about my father. I call it, he's basically Fred Sanford reincarnated in the flesh. So, funny thing is, he had a piano course, and I'm telling him every day, like, man, I just really wish I could learn how to read music. And he's like, yeah, man, I understand. I feel. He's looking at me like, man, I feel you. And after like a month, one day I said it, and he was like, yeah, man, you know, well, I mean, if you want, man, you can just go in the middle room and, yeah, there's a piano course in there. I need that emoji, that, like, I'm like, what? I've been sitting here all this time telling you that I'm trying to learn how to read music, and you telling me, like, yeah, man, I feel you. You know, that would be a good thing. And you got a piano course in your second bedroom, just sitting there. Exactly, hilarious, right? So, anyway, I go get the course, and this course basically takes the song Happy Birthday and teaches you first how to read music and then how to play that, like, many different ways. And that was really good because I learned how to read music. And so by the time I got to learning how to play by ear and with my mentor, I had a good foundation. I could at least access music. I could access music because I could read. And the first song I learned how to play was Brian McKnight, Home. And I'll get back to that in a second. But excuse me, I apologize about this. A little congested. So, back to the story. So I'm in my room every day. I come home from work. First it was school, and then eventually I graduated. I come home from work every day. I go in my room, and all I do is make tracks and continue to study how to read music. That's all I did. That's all I was interested in. It was so fun. And the groups that I was following at that time was the Roots. We were big fans of the Roots. And here was the thing about the Roots that I love, and what I was so impressed with. The Roots are the whole reason why I'm doing what I'm doing today. And that is, during that time in '97, there was no such thing as a hip-hop band, really. I mean, I won't say there's no such thing. Maybe there were a few out there, but it was extremely rare. And so the Roots blew my mind. I knew what it was to make a sample and chop things up and have chords and drum beats, but I had never seen anybody take that from the studio and where the group was playing it live. I was blown away. Absolutely blown away. I was like, wow. And here was the thing. Here was the other reason why I wanted to learn how to play an instrument and learn more about music. Because as I was sampling, I would come across pieces of music that I liked, as far as maybe it was a classical piece, and maybe it had piano, strings, maybe violas, and I don't know, timpani. And maybe I liked everything except for the timpani part. Well, if you're sampling, you can't take the timpani out. You know, you're just stuck with it. So you just make the best of it and, you know, use it like it is. But I was thinking to myself, well, if I can play, then I can just recreate the instruments and leave out the timpani. I can play it myself, and I don't have to have the timpani in there. Voila. So that's what I did, you know, and between that, and my only goal was to make my hip-hop tracks better. Like, I never planned on doing what I do today. Never planned on being a jazz musician and studying all these different styles of music. But that's the next part of the story. So I decided I'm gonna play an instrument. I start learning how to read music. I'm still at a standstill because I didn't know how to play by ear. I knew how to make my own tracks by ear, but figure out songs by ear, not really. And so at some point, I was going to church at that time, and the church that I was in was a church where you had to do something. Like you were going to do something. And so at some point I was like, well, if there's anything in here that is my cup of tea, maybe it's the music. You know, I didn't know anything about gospel music, but the thing was, I was like, I'm into music, so that would probably be fun. So here's what I did. They said that I could go over to the music department. I started bringing my ASR 10 to church. Now that's the funny thing, because it was pre the times when everybody was having MPCs in church and stuff like that. I would bring it, and I would just play like percussion, but it was the most fun in the world. I'm like, this is great. I want to come to church every Sunday. This is great. So that's what I did, and during that time, I started realizing that there was a lot of things that I heard in hip hop, as far as the bass lines and the beats and stuff like that, that I heard in gospel. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And then that started expanding my horizons. At that point, I realized, like, wow, there's so many chords, so many bass lines, so many beats. Like, there's so much. And then I'm getting into voices. And sorry for the glare, you guys. But getting into voices and everything. And I'm like, this is great. You know? And so that's what made me, from there, I started studying gospel music. And eventually I was getting ready to give up because I wanted a mentor, and I didn't really know where. I mean, I wanted to learn, but I didn't know how to learn. I didn't know how you learn this stuff. And there was really nobody that was reaching out like, hey, let me teach you. And so it just so happened that the church that I was attending went to another church for like an evening service, and it was the guy that was there was the musician for that church, and everything was going well, the music and everything, and I was sad because I wanted to participate, but you know, I didn't really know. I only knew a little bit, and that wasn't enough to really fully participate. So my homeboy, shout out to Tyrone Tank Langford, he was like, he was on drums, and that actually was one of the things that kept me motivated, because him and I used to we were the same age, you know, around the same exact age. We had the same interests as far as music, so any little thing that we learned, we had fun sharing with each other and talking about it. So he tells me, hey man, he's playing the drums and the organist is playing, or he says, man, why don't you go on the other side of the church? And there was a grand piano over there. The thing was, the guy that went to that church, you know, he was playing the piano and he could play. He was playing very well. And so he said, man, why don't you go over there? And see, that was the one thing about me I could say, like, and this comes from my childhood, it's hard to hurt my feelings. I got tough skin, and like, I'll try anything. You know, I'll go out on a limb and try it. You know, if I fail, I fail, but at least I can say I tried. So I had the audacity, like literally, the audacity to go to the piano and ask this guy who is blazing it if I could play. And he was like, sure. I mean, you know, yeah, nobody like, sure. So I sit down, and it wasn't that I was terrible, but I didn't know chords and all that kind of stuff. I could find a melody and I would follow along. So he saw that I really, really wanted to learn, and I just needed guidance, but I wanted it so badly that I was willing to sit down. I was willing to ask someone who could play to get up, to sit down and play, and even risk embarrassing myself. Like, and I guess you could say that's a moment of inspiration for, you know, anybody who's trying anything. Like, do it. Just do it. Like at the very least, like the post I put up the other day, follow your heart. At the very least, if it doesn't land you where you want to be, it'll be an arrow in the direction of where you want to go. Had I not had the audacity to ask this guy to get up, I would be playing today, because he wound up being my mentor, because he saw how much I wanted it. And he said to me after that, after the service, he said, you should let me take you you should let me take you under my wing and teach you. So fast forward, eventually going back and forth in my head due to some other fears, I wound up accepting, and the funny thing was, he lived in Capitol Heights. And I was like, and I had a car. I was like, man, I don't really know if I want to. And he said, all right, well, if you're going to let a drive, a distance stop you from living your dream, then all right, I don't have anything else to say. And I was like, all right, I'll be out there Monday. Like, it spoke very loud and clear to me. So I started taking piano lessons. His name was Dr. Maurice Johnson. He's another one I owe everything to. Like, literally, he passed. I wish he was here today because he'd be so proud of me. Everything that he taught me, like, I've done that and gone beyond, and it was all that he wanted, So long story short, we get started, and most generous guy ever. Didn't charge me a whole lot, and took me under his wing as really like a son. And he said I reminded him a lot of himself because he had the same drive, and that was one of the reasons why he was really excited to work with me. He knew how badly I wanted, and I would do the work. I mean, I would leave immediately from his house, go straight home and practice, and that's what I did. So he fed me the information. We did about 1.5 years of lessons, and then I got started playing. At that point, at that time when I was attending church, I started playing in the church. So that was about maybe 6 months. I had been studying for 1.5 years, playing for about 6 months, and that's when things started for me. Right after that, he passed about 6 months later, unfortunately. But the coolest thing about it was that before he passed, I would make visits. I would have visits with him, and they weren't lessons because at that point it was just touching bases. He taught me everything I needed, and I was on my own. He would touch bases on a few little things and help me to tweak it. But the coolest thing, I tell y'all, the absolute coolest thing is that at the end, before he wound up going in the hospital, before he passed, I was teaching him. And it was the most, I can't explain in words. Y'all can only imagine. It makes me tear up just thinking about it. Like, I was teaching him. And he used to say, like, I started teaching him scales and different things that he didn't know because I started learning jazz and some other deeper harmonies. So by the time we finished, I was sitting at the piano, he was sitting on the side with the notebook. And the thing was, like, no ego trip, no arrogance, just the fact of giving back to somebody who poured into me, somebody who took me under their wing, was absolutely amazing. Like, to this day, it's still one of the highlights of my life, and I'm so grateful for it. So what had happened was I started working in the church, and I got a full-time job. I was working for an auto parts store, and I wound up getting a full-time job at 21, and it was really cool because I was going to school for engineering as well, audio engineering, and I got this job, and now I'm doing what I love. So now all of a sudden, instead of spending 8 hours a day in a warehouse, in auto parts with something that I was good at, but I was like, as they say, I was so done. I was so over it. And my heart wasn't there. I leave there and and eventually, fall into making like $100 more than I was a week. So already, woo woo, right? And then on top of that, though, I get a chance to spend 8 hours just focusing on studying music. I mean, I can't tell y'all. It was a dream come true, and I took every advantage of it. The way that it happened was that, here's another funny part of the story, and I'll probably end this soon because I realized, like, oh yeah, this is going to be long. I'm not going to make one, video that's like 2 million hours long. We're just going to break it up. So I guess this will be the last part that I talk about. And then please drop your questions, because right after this, when I get a chance, we're going to sit down, answer all your questions. So I was ready to go full time. I'm at Standard Auto Parts. That was the company I worked for. Shout out to my homeboy, my homie, older homie in the game, Berkeley Sampson, who wound up giving me my first job as a musician. Shout out, brother. I love you. Love you to the end, brother. You're my man. So we're working there, and he knew I was into music. I would go as far as I would bring my cassette tape player and my headphones, and I would recite the notes and the chords to theory. Like I would recite scales over and over and over and over, and I put it on tape. And I made hypnosis. I made like hypnosis tapes where I would teach myself the chords and scales by repeating them over and over and over and over along with the sounds. And that's all I would repeat all day long while I was at work. Because I was just like, man, I gotta find some way to keep spending the time here where I want to be. So I made a way. And I was still able to do my job, even though sometimes it would take me an hour to do a 15-minute job. I knew it was time for me to go even for their sake, because my heart just wasn't there. But it was literally just that. So he knows that I'm into music. And at some point he says, hey man, like my church, they need someone to fill in. Now here's the funny part, and I'll end the story here and pick up on the next stream. So the funny part was I was learning well, and my mentor was giving me material that was for each aspect at that time of playing gospel music and playing in a church or whatever. So I had the different songs that you need for different times. So that was coming along well, but I was still afraid. I wasn't ready yet. So the first time he asked me, I was like, not really ready yet. Now here's the funny thing. The second time he asked me, I wanted it so badly that when he asked me if I could play, even though I was totally fearful, I was like, man, this is my chance. So I went to the front desk and I grabbed a little sheet of like a little sticky pad that the guys were using to sell auto parts, took a pen, and I wrote down every song that I knew. And it was so funny because I only knew like 8 songs, and I had enough material to get through one event, like one service. And it was so funny because it took a lot of courage to do that, because I knew that after I played for that one event, that one service, like I was done. I had nothing else to offer. So it was funny because I was like, the reality was if I got the job, it was like my whole career was done after those 8 songs. But here's what I knew. I trusted myself. I trusted myself to the point of knowing that all I needed was the opportunity. Like, and I say that to like somebody listening, like, you know that all you need is the opportunity and you're just gonna knock it out the park. So just keep doing what you're doing. Because I was like, man, I only know 8 songs, but I promised myself something. I said, if I get this, then right after those 8 songs, by the next week, I'm gonna know another 8, because I'm gonna do nothing but study. I gotta get in here. I gotta do this. This is my chance to do what I want full time. So he didn't know that, and nobody else knew that. Nobody else knew I had 8 songs to my name. So I go and I do it, and it goes well. And afterwards, the administrators come up to me, you know, and they take me seriously. That's the other thing too that I appreciated, because, you know, immediately because they didn't know me, immediately I was respected in a different way than, you know, sometimes when you're with people that know you and don't really take you seriously. So that was really, really good. So they come to me and they say, you know, is it possible that you can continue on, at least with helping us out? Now, here was the factor. The thing was, I was only 21. And usually at 21, like, the level of experience that I needed wasn't there, right? Because it was my first opportunity. So I didn't really have experience with, like, managing, you know, a whole operation and those kind of things. But I had one good thing on my side, which was I had a good mentor. And I really did have the foundation. All I needed, it was like credit. It was like credit, where the only way, like, no credit is bad credit. The only way you can get credit is somebody give you the opportunity to have credit. But the problem is, most people that want to give you the opportunity of first looking for your history of credit, so you get stuck in that quandary. So it just so happened that in this case, they were looking for someone to be able to play full time and have more experience, and I was okay with that. I was still gonna I was just gonna be there, like as much as I could. I was just gonna be in a position to work. So they used me through the holidays. They happened to be around the holiday time. You can't find a musician on the holidays, so it worked out. So I was happy. Now, at that point, it still was where they were looking for someone else. But by the beginning of the year, they decided to give me a shot. I'll be forever grateful for it, because it was the very first thing that launched me into everything I wanted to do from the perspective of time, being able to focus, practice, also to learn business skills, to learn how to manage people, to learn how to manage myself, to learn how to, I was good with time. That's one thing that's always been on my side. I would say now my creativity and talent is coming out, but at first it was purely just discipline. That's just all I had, but it was the best thing I could have had. So I get that opportunity, and that starts the next phase of my learning and of my progress in my music career. And I wound up doing that for the next 8 years. I wound up playing in church for 8 years before doing other things. So I'm gonna stop there. Actually, this is a good place to stop, because this is part 1. I'm gonna pick it up, part 2. I'm gonna keep it moving. And like I said, this is the beginning of a series of vlogs. My goal at this point is to teach, to educate, to inspire, to influence, and to be able to tell my process, my journey, and just put it all out there so that way it can help people. So drop a question. I'm gonna answer it, and then I'll be back with the next live stream.